His mother says he was a normal, happy boy until he became obsessed with black metal music.
Rock and roll!
Sounds like Christian Rick.
Heavy metal music. Groups promote satanic worship.
They're anti-peace and anti-life.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Metal Face Podcast, episode 2. I hope you're all doing well out there.
Episode 2.
We've made it to episode 2. Can you believe it?
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
I can't believe it.
That's all
we haven't made any mistakes so far.
We'll get to that. Let's just revel in the success of getting to episode 2 in less than 5 years for a moment.
Yeah.
So my name is Ben. I am one of the 3 hosts here. I'm joined by my good friend Josh. Josh, say hello.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Josh. And I'm also joined by Tom.
Hey, Ben. Hey, Josh. How you doing, guys?
Not bad.
Alive and well.
So, tell me.
So on this week's episode, we will be covering Ulcerate with their album Stare Into Death and Be Still. We'll be discussing System of a Down's Hypnotise, and we'll also be covering XDO with Immortal Wars. But before we get to that, I think we each have some apologies to make for our crimes in episode 1. We've already done it.
Well, what happened, guys?
Yeah, who wants to go first?
I'll stand proud in my shame.
I think your crime was most heinous, so maybe you should go first.
So I'd like to address this apology specifically to the Senate and the people of Rome, anyone who's ever studied history, for mixing up Punic War 2 and Punic War 3.
Oh my god. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Punic War 2,
Well,
not the second Punic War.
No,
Punic War 2.
It's called the
Return of the Punic War.
Isn't that the same?
It's like Punic War 3. It's like the sequel.
Yeah, Josh, we've already pissed off the Senate and the entire Roman state. Don't do it anymore. We don't need any more trouble.
Jesus, man.
As I understand it, a sensible title for Punic War 2 would be Punic War 2 Carthage Strikes Back. So, But no, I think it's just called the first, the second, and the third. But you can call it World War 2 or WW2.
That's true. World War 3?
Yeah, no, hopefully not. But anyway, the point is, I very foolishly mixed up which one was which when discussing.
That is ridiculous. The only thing that's more ridiculous than that, though, is me confusing Mesmerise with Hypnotise. I mean, I gotta say, I think to some extent, fair enough. They were recorded the same year. No, they are.
Not letting you off the
hook. They are kind of the same album. But then when I was listening to Mesmerise, I was like, where's the songs that what's going on? And then of course I realised, I'm thinking of a different album.
You picked the wrong bloody album.
I know.
Are you sure you weren't just like really nostalgic about a not very good album? I didn't recognise any
So I was like, oh fuck, I better back out and say I meant a different album. She meant Toxicity. It's like an easy mistake to make. But I know why me and Josh have apologies to make. But what about you, Ben? What have you done?
Now, what's your sin?
So, upon re-listening to the episode which Tom put together, I noticed I said something pretty unforgivable, a pretty odd thing to say on a heavy metal podcast.
Oh no, was this the thing about metalcore fans?
No, I don't regret that. Yeah. No, I still didn't like drums, which is just the most unusual.
Oh yeah, you did.
What am I saying? Whilst listening to the podcast, realised I spent the entire Judas Priest section praising the drumming.
Yeah, because I remember you saying that and being like, what the hell?
I think I'd found myself down a path, and I just carried on down it, and then I don't like where I ended up.
You panicked in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, the bright lights and the podcast pressure got to me, and I crumbled.
You doubled down. You said drumming should be illegal.
I did.
Drummers everywhere are offended.
I'm offended, so...
You're a drummer.
You've both seen me play drums
I've seen you play a cajon.
Sorry, that is a drum. Thank you very much.
Oh God, guys, we were meant to be
you play a
covering.
box.
This was meant to be a moment of healing, and we are now just creating more.
Listen, mister, you're lucky this isn't live, all right? This isn't in person.
No, I actually enjoyed seeing you play with that band. What were they called?
Pegasus
that you played with in Exeter. That was very cool. Go check them out, guys, on Spotify.
I don't think there's ever been a recording of Pegasus show.
That'd be against the like folk ethos, right? You can listen on like a sort of a can and a piece of string.
That's the folk punk ethos.
Oh, yeah.
Slightly different.
Nice.
Okay, guys. So if we're done with our apologies, I've got a bit of.
It's good to get the practice in.
Yeah, every episode's probably going to open this week. Let's see what we can do this week. So yeah, my news. I've finally bought my Bloodstock ticket for this year.
Oh, have you?
Ah,
I know. I've been saying I'll do it since probably last August.
Yeah,
so...
I bought mine in the summer. Drunken decision. I woke up and I had a receipt on my phone for a Bloodstock ticket. Sometimes it's good to get drunk and make these decisions.
I have not bought a Bloodstock ticket.
Fucking traitor.
Do you think you're gonna? Are we gonna be having a Metal Face outing to Bloodstock?
I would really like to, and I'm gonna get around to it at some stage. There may be other events in the world which conspire to prevent me attending.
Potentially, but we're not talking about that. We're focusing on the positive, okay?
Yeah, I think we should say we should talk about Bloodstock with the idea that it would be going ahead this year. Let's just assume that.
Tom, you were telling me something about what the organisers have said. Effectively, they're going to do it.
Yeah, they basically said, look, we're planning to do it. They're going to start sort of investing in the whole process, because obviously putting a festival on it doesn't just start in August. They need to set things up a long time in advance. And they basically said, unless they get any direct instruction from the government saying, don't do this, they're just going to go ahead and start doing it pretty much. And they also said that under no circumstances are they going to have a social distance festival.
I just don't see how that would work.
That it's all or nothing, really. You just you go to a festival to have fun and socialise and be shoulder to shoulder with people in a crowd. So it's either going to happen the way that we want it to happen, or it's not going to happen at all. And I think jury's out a little bit. Obviously, no one really knows what the next few months are going to hold. But this is, over half a year away, so we could be in a much better position.
So assuming Bloodstock goes ahead, what bands does everyone want to see?
I think the lineup's looking pretty good this year. Judas Priest, I talked about that last week, how much I want to see them. Dimmu Borgir, really excited to see them.
Oh yeah, that'd be a cool one. Oh, Silosis, that was one of the bands that we covered in Practice episode. They were alright, actually.
I'm pretty excited to see Paradise Lost.
Oh yeah, I've never listened to them before, actually.
They're a big old goth metal band.
I recognise the name.
And I've sort of been thinking I should spend some time and try and get into Devin Townsend, because the people that like him really fucking like him. There must be something going on there. I gotta say though, I think I'm probably most excited for Cattle Decapitation, who I think are playing on the Saturday at the same time as Merciful Fate.
Yes, they are.
Because I'm not a Merciful Fate fan. Sorry, Merciful Fate fans listening.
That's next week's apology.
Or one of you.
Oof. That's there's at least 4. I mean,
they are headlining Bloodstock.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's a band on the Friday who I don't know if you guys are aware of, Bloodywood.
The Indian band.
Yes.
They are cool. Yes, they're from New Delhi, I believe.
And an Indian band incorporating sort of, well, what sounds to me like Indian music into the sound, right?
They have a few kind of folk music elements there too, which is really interesting.
That's
There's a couple of bands doing that at the moment. Maybe we'll talk about
Oh,
it in the
really?
future. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to cover some metal from the far-flung places of the world.
So that's Bloodstock. Are there any other festivals you guys are hoping to go to?
Well, of course, the advantage of Bloodstock is that it's close to home. You wouldn't want to go booking a ticket to a festival in another country on a whim, would you, Ben?
No, not after you've, had a couple of drinks.
No,
You
that'd
get
be silly.
impulsive.
Even if the lineup's really, really good, it's just not a good idea at the moment to just go and book a festival in Poland. On the 2nd of June, actually, Mystic Festival, which me and Ben have bought tickets to on a whim.
In case you couldn't tell by that foreshadowing, yeah, we've done that.
That's exactly what we did.
We went and did that. But to be fair, the lineup looks absolutely incredible.
The lineup is just beyond good, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so Judas Priest are playing, and like I said last week, I really want to see him, so I'm going to go see him twice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, so you got Judas Priest headlining, Gojira headlining. Down the line, you have Mastodon.
The Who.
You have Migler, Solstafir,
Really?
Igor, who I got into last year, very unusual band. Baroness, one of my sort of new favourite bands. Gavelatech, absolutely brilliant. And then you've got sort of other classics like Mayhem, Obituary, a whole bunch of good stuff, really. And Merciful Fate again, so they must have some fans.
Leave him alone.
Oh shit, Alien Weaponry as well.
Yeah, they're cool.
Oh, yeah.
They're the New Zealand band, aren't they?
Yeah, they're singing sort of Maori and stuff.
That's cool.
Fucking cool.
Yeah.
So, Believe From Within are playing too, and for you metalcore fans out there, they're pretty good. They're Scottish.
One of you... Sorry.
You gotta stop.
Do you live in a world where like 99% of people are like black metal fans? And there's like this tiny proportion of people who like other genres.
Yeah, so Mystic Fest takes place in the shipyards in Dansk, right? We went there last year to see Behemoth.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an awesome venue for a festival. Just let it happen, please. Let us go.
I would be so pleased. And for anyone thinking of going, tickets are only about they're about £90,
Yeah, thereabouts.
which is pretty decent for a
Yeah.
lineup of that caliber. What about you, Josh? Have you got any festivals on the horizon?
The only major one for me this year would be Arctangent, which is in Bristol.
Oh yeah.
It's also kind of prog, post type of stuff. It's got Opeth and Cult of Luna.
Oh yeah, Cult of Luna. Yeah.
Headlining, also Tesseract and so on.
Nice.
There's really cool bands there, and I know been to a festival with just that kind of music before. I think it's gonna be a really interesting vibe.
Yeah, it looks really, really good. Got Perturbator. I'm a big fan. I think Boss Keloid are playing as well. I think.
You're right. I think.
Yeah.
Royal Tomasi are playing also, who are a kind of favourite of mine too. I think they're really cool. There's a lot of interesting like cool bands there who I don't know how exciting they are to see live, because sometimes with this kind of post proggy stuff can be a bit slow, but I think it'd be a really cool experience anyway.
I think looking at this lineup, I might end up just having to take a week off work and go to Arctangent and then immediately to Bloodstock.
Yes.
No, wait, it's the other way around. Go to Bloodstock and then Arctangent. But
Yeah, so we also have Download Festival as well, hopefully going ahead this year in June.
oh yeah,
Which is immediately after Mystic Festival. So you got Baroness, Ailstorm, who are classic, great live band. Korn,
Definitely great
who
live.
I would love to see live. Not my favourite band, but definitely be an interesting one. And then, of course, System of a Down as well, who I've liked for a long time and still not seen live.
Yeah, I'd love to see him live, definitely.
There are a lot of bands who are looking at the poster, which are real kind of teenage favourites of mine. You've got Skillet and A Day to Remember and stuff. But you've also got some kind of interesting smaller bands as well. So I don't know if you guys know Sleep Token. They're super interesting kind of proggy. I don't know what they are. They're weird, but they're cool. And they're playing on the Friday. So this, I actually looked at the lineup before just now, and I kind of assumed it would be bad. But this is actually really cool.
Yeah, no, there's always something good on Downloads lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hope it goes ahead. I think, fingers crossed. A lot of ground to cover before then in terms of COVID, but it is also quite a few months away.
Well, if I may deliver a small piece of COVID good news.
Yeah.
You have to.
Well, at the current rate we're vaccinating, I believe we'll be done with 75% of the population by July, which they think might be enough to give us herd immunity.
God
damn.
If that is the case, then Bloodstock's going ahead.
So, in that spirit, we should talk about one of modern metal's most ubiquitous bands, System of a Down, and their album Hypnotise.
Is it not Mesmerise?
Oh, fuck. Alright, so, System of a Down, formed in 1994 in California, and hailing from Armenia and with such a weird sound, they've done pretty fucking well for themselves. So this album, Hypnotise, is their fifth album, which was released the same year as their fourth album, Mesmerise, both of which debuted at number one in the US, making them one of the only artists to do that, alongside the likes of Tupac and the Beatles. And apparently someone else called DMX, who I've never fucking heard of. So, System of a Down are an interesting one in terms of genre. It's really hard to define their sound. You've got everything from kind of Armenian folk influences to some of that sort of new metal sound of the 90s. They're one of those bands with these sort of huge hits like Chop Suey that everyone knows, even people who just don't listen to metal at all. And then you got like completely bizarre and unknown songs like Dear Dance off Toxicity or Peephole off their self-titled albums. Obviously not nearly as commercially successful as some of their other work. Interestingly, I actually have no idea how you guys feel about System of a Down. They're sort of a band that I was very into when I was younger, and I've had a bit of a resurgence with recently. So they're not a band that we, as mates, have ever really talked about before. So I'll start with you, Josh. Josh, System fan?
I think I am. I definitely really love tracks like, obviously, Chop Suey and Aerials, and I kind of was into them again as a teenager. I haven't really listened to them in a couple of years, though, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I was never deep into them. I kind of like listened to like Toxicity or whatever, and that was about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's this has been my first time I've really kind of spent a lot of time with the System album, and it's been I like it a lot. They're cool.
I mean, they've got 5 albums, so they got the self-titled album, Toxicity, Steal This Album. I'm about to miss one out, aren't I? Oh no, and then Mesmerise and Hypnotise. That's 5, right? And then recently they just released 2 singles, which is Genocidal Humanoids and Protect the Land. And there was talk of that maybe turning into an album, but I don't actually think they're sort of doing that now.
I've seen some comments from the band members, and I think the likelihood of an album seems low. They're a band that's got quite a lot of side projects going on. I think they
have, definitely.
They have their outlet there, and maybe they find it easier to work with that than each other for whatever reason.
Yeah.
There does seem to be a lot of band drama, which I don't want to comment on.
There's some tension you can kind of pick up on,
Yeah.
And I mean, Serge Tankian, who's the singer for most of the albums, is his side project is great and has got a lot of that System sound in it. Darren Malakian's project, Scars on Broadway, as well, is a good one. Have you guys listened to either of those?
Yeah, I find myself going back to their self-titled album, Scars on Broadway, quite a lot. It makes regular rotation for me.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
To answer your question, Tom, for me, System of a Down, I was a huge fan of System of a Down when I was younger. And yeah, I think same as you, they sort of crop up now and again, like on a playlist, you know, and then
Definitely.
I just get sucked back in, and then I'm like listening to them all the time for like a couple of months.
And that's the thing, you're never far away from hearing a System of a Down song, especially especially something like Chop Suey or BYOB. I mean, they would play them at the sort of indie rock clubs that I used to go to when I was like 18. I mean, System are sort of one of the first bands I properly got into just in general, I think. I used to do a paper round when I was like 12, and I'd borrow my brother's iPod.
Aww.
And he had all of System of a Down stuff, all 5 albums on it. And there was the only sort of metal on there. And I just listened to it round and round on rotation pretty much. So a big sort of gateway band for me.
I think for sure. I think they're definitely... They do kind of sit interestingly at that kind of crossroads, don't they? Between... I don't know if I want to say indie or something, but definitely like more mainstream music.
Yeah, sort of alternative rock.
Yeah. But also they're very... At the same time as being very accessible, they've got a very complex and weird sound. Like a lot of very strange noises and things come out of that band.
There's a lot of shit going on there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because I remember being into them in school, and you know what it's like. People are like, people talk a lot of shit about metal when you're that age, and you always feel kind of, I don't know about you guys, felt kind of defensive of it sort of growing up. And I remember thinking like, yeah, but have they even listened to System of a Down? Because you can't listen to that band and be like, these guys don't know what the fuck they're doing. Oh, well, maybe a bit.
They have some pretty weird songs on there, don't they?
Yeah.
But that's the crazy thing about System of a Down, I think, is that they can go from singing about like bananas and like anal sex and then covering like the bombing of hospitals, which pretty serious stuff, you know, like they can swing that whole sort of and there is a consistent message behind it all, you know, like a lot of sort of anti-media, anti-war like rhetoric in there. But yeah, and I think System of a Down, I couldn't really describe their sound if you gave me like loads of sounds. They're so unique. And I think especially Serge's vocals, they're so like, you know, la 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 la, like I don't even know how that fits into metal, but he fucking makes it work.
They are so difficult to place sort of genre-wise. Darren Malakian said that his influences on this album, Hypnotise, were everything from sort of alternative rock stuff like the Kinks to even like Motown stuff like Supremes. You know, they did that song Baby Love. If you listen to it, you'd recognise it.
Yeah.
And then even stuff like Dark Throne as well, and like black metal. And you can hear those sort of occasional black metal moments.
And then, like you said as well, you've got that like Armenian folk moments in there as well, which are like it comes together in such a eclectic mix of influences that I think this is the kind of band that's only going to happen, you know, once. I don't think there'll be a band where you're like, oh, these guys are just like System of a Down. You know, like the closest thing I think you can get to it is their side projects, which is basically just the elements of it amplified depending on the individual you're listening to.
Yeah, definitely,
for sure,
definitely. Is it just the two of them that have side projects, Serge and Darren?
I think there's another one.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. Yeah, and I mean, like, I gotta say, I like their side projects, but there's definitely something kind of magical that happens when they get together as a group.
I think it's the interplay as well for me. Like, I think System of a Down's music is really good, but I think without Serge and Darren's vocals, I don't think they'd be nearly as good. I think those two really set it off for me, especially like, you know, Serge having that more like operatic, like unusual kind of tone, and then Darren has quite like an unusual, like it's creepy sort of like twist to it. Like
it's like so nasal, but somehow doesn't it doesn't grate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it just sounds like it comes from some like a really genuine place. I sort of imagine that he must be aware that his voice is kind of weird and probably in a lot of contexts doesn't have great commercial value, but he's just still throwing his lungs behind it completely, and it comes off like really well.
It feels like the music as a whole is much more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
You know, like the Surge's voice by itself would be kind of like, it's really cool, but it wouldn't be like this massive thing. And same with the guitars and the drums and so forth. I think particularly with all these weird elements coming together, no one element, if I do say so, is that amazing. But when you combine all of it together, it's really good.
It's straightforward, isn't it? It's like, you know, the music isn't like, it's not some mad kind of proggy, sort of insane, like, you know, you wouldn't go to System of a Down and like watch like a drum cam necessarily of like, you know, somebody at the absolute height of their playing. Because that's not really what it's about. It's almost like with Nirvana, it's like, most people can learn Nirvana songs quite easily on a guitar, but they're just so well written.
Yeah.
They just sound great, you know? And I think the thing is, especially with this album, is like, it's so hooky. Like, there's just hooks throughout the songs. Like, you don't want to step away from a song because something new is happening over and over again. and it's going in a different direction.
Yeah, and they are really catchy. I find myself singing along to most of the album. Even though when I looked at the track list ahead of, listening through the album this week, it was like, I don't know if I remember all these songs, but then as soon as I started playing, I was singing along to them like I was cool 16-year-old sitting at the back of the bus. Yeah, again.
I know, but especially when you're a teenager, they're heavy as fuck, so you get that kind of like great heavy moments. But also, they're doing a lot of interesting shit, and it's got those like emotional sing-along moments.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's some really emotional tracks on there.
It kind of also is interesting how a lot of System music is really political, particularly with them. I know Soda is very involved in a lot of advocacy for Armenia, particularly around recognizing the Armenian genocide. I think it's interesting kind of hearing, like you say, these in Attack, or I think it's Soldier Side, there's a lot of political kind of
tentative,
quite on the nose messages going on in there, but it's really catchy and it's a really good song. It kind of does double duty with the emotional bits and the political bits.
They've got all these political songs, but they also go into sort of stuff that is just sort of lighthearted and funny. And I think there's something quite clever about putting very serious things with like very not serious things. The song Kill Rock and Roll is literally about Darren Blaken hit a rabbit with his car, and then he talks about how he felt like the biggest asshole because killing a rabbit was like killing rock and roll.
Right.
And that's why it's got that bit,
from.
eat all the grass that you want, accidents happen in the dark.
Right, okay, makes sense now. I think their lyrics are like sufficiently like metaphorical that there is room for interpretation, but there's still a message there, and it doesn't come off as like trying too hard or being too like on the nose. I think sometimes musicians can just sort of be a bit too straightforward, and you're kind of like, yeah, okay, this feels like preaching.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, any standout tracks?
For me, Attack was probably the best song.
Oh, really?
I just really like how high energy it was. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Not one of my favourite, actually.
Really? Okay, maybe I just like the kind of screaming about attacking people.
Yeah.
But I also like Soldier Side quite a lot. I think I was kind of...
Yeah, I liked, honestly, I love most of the album, like almost every song. It's really hard to pick. I love Attack, Hypnotise, Lonely Day, I think it's an amazing song. Holy Mountains, another amazing song. But then even something like Vicinity of Vicinity, I like wouldn't pick that as a favourite, but then whenever it plays, I can't help but like start singing to it. And then I sort of stop halfway through and think, what the fuck am I saying?
Yeah, I know.
But it's all great, man. Yeah, I think if I was really pushed, I'd probably pick... what was I going to pick? I'd probably pick Lonely Day. I think Lonely Day is probably my favourite. It's a bit of a slower song, but it's just such like an absolute banger to put on the end of the album where you just like... They've had all this energy throughout, and then Lonely Day is a little bit lower energy, but like the emotional like belting it out side of it is just like... I would give that the chef kiss of approval.
They hit hard emotionally, don't they? They really can do it. I think my favourite songs, probably Hypnotise, Kill Rock and Roll. I really like that one. I just love the eat all the grass that you want bit. It's just so unusual, and they're just one of those bands where you can accept those sort of breaks from the music as part of it, rather than like doing loads of different styles to be edgy or something. And then She's Like Heroin. I love that song. I think it's just like, it's really dark and it hits that darkness really nicely. Like, it's a really unusual example of a really dark song on quite like a fun album.
Well, I think out of 12 tracks, we just named 10. So
pretty strong album overall.
Pretty good.
Pretty fucking good. So from one album that we all liked to another, which I suspect we might all like, but who knows. Josh, what have we been listening to?
We've been listening to The Immortal Wars by Ex Deo. So Ex Deo are this really interesting kind of concept band. It's the singer from Cataclysm. It's his side project. And it's interesting because they sound totally different to Cataclysm. And they've got a really strong theme. So the idea is that it's all the songs about Roman times and about mostly kind of Roman wars and stuff like that.
The Roman times,
yeah, not just everyday Roman
songs about like aqueducts,
Claudius est in horto kind of stuff. It's proper.
Caecilius et in.
Oh, Caecilius, yes, that's the one. They're kind of like Roman Sabaton, right? There are all these songs are about like various battles that the Romans fought and won or lost. And there are other songs kind of cover things like Caligula and, the battle to Teutoburg Forest, the war between Mark Antony and...
I remember it well.
Augustus, I think it is. And now, The Immortal Wars is kind of a stronger concept album in the sense it follows the second Punic War.
I thought it was
kind of from
third.
The second.
Yeah,
no.
That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah, I heard somewhere recently that it was the third.
That was my shameful
wrong?
mistake.
Savage.
No.
Sorry, we shouldn't make you relive these wounds, Josh.
This is worse bullying than the metalcore incident last time. But it's cool because The second Punic War's got a lot of very big, larger-than-life characters in it. Hannibal himself he's the leader of the Carthaginian forces fighting the Romans. He was kind of a big, charismatic figure in history. And you had a lot of big names and personalities going on here. And I think it makes some really good music because you've got a very strong narrative.
I think it lends itself well to metal, right? Like you see a lot of these, these bands, like you said, Sabaton and like Amon Amarth singing about like these epics. And I think something about that.
And a word that used to be thrown around a lot was battle metal. You don't really hear it so much these days, but I mean that covers sort of everyone from like Nile to, as you say, Amon Amarth to like early Ailstorm. These bands that have ancient warfare as their kind of as their key motif.
It's quite good though, right? Like I think
I love it.
It's really interesting, and I think like the epicness of the story is definitely, especially when I was listening to XDO, it like comes through. Like they have a real epic sound, and you kind of like.
And metal really lends itself to this sort of thing. You can have those sort of fast mosh songs, which are almost like battles. You can have the sort of power ballads, which is like the fall of, I don't know, Constantinople or something.
I think the best thing about this one, though, is that it combines this really strong, like you say, the things that metal suited to. We've got this really kind of cool storyline and history and context. But it's also just, in my opinion at least, a really well-written, really tightly recorded, really good album.
Yeah.
All the instruments sound good. Vocals sound good. It's really exciting. There's no boring stuff. It doesn't drag, I don't feel, at any stage, really. It's kind of really fast all the way through and really intense. And you've got this really cool interplay between a mix of different orchestral instruments with, strings and percussion and these weird sort of, manly chants where I was like,
I love that bit.
It's cooler than I'm making it sound, and it plays in really well with all the riffs and things, where it's, the riffs are kind of still like death metal.
I gotta agree with you. I think the sort of flavor of death metal they're playing, it's really well executed. It's really tight, really like well played. It's not particularly stand out on its own, and I think it is that combination with the theming and then the more orchestral things, like the drums. To me, they had a lot of like orchestral sort of drumming involved, and like string sections, even like a brass section on a couple of songs that was like really cool. That
was just like and I think, as you say, like the riffs are strong, but they're not sort of. It's almost not what you're listening to. You're kind of listening to this sort of charging symphonic sound in the background.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a bit in one of the songs, The Crossing of the Alps.
Yeah, man.
Where that is, I think you know what I mean, where it kind of, the first verse ends, I think it's not quite the chorus, but it goes into this really cool sort of drum fill around the toms with this big riff. And that would be cool by itself. Then you've also got this extra sort of orchestral percussion coming in on kind of the offbeats and things, which is really sort of is like, takes the cake, ices it. That's a little sprinkle on top. And I think that's what makes this album really great. And I just, as you can tell, I really like it. Yeah. I'll just keep gushing.
Yeah, you seem to really love this. Like, I mean, and like, good. It is really, really good. Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Right from the first song, the Rise of Hannibal was a great start. And as soon as I put it on, I kind of like leaned back in my chair. I was just smiling, like, this is going to be a good week. Like, I'm going to enjoy this.
You relax into it.
Oh, yeah.
You're just like, oh, yeah, here we go. I mean, I thought it was an absolute blast, like, all the way through. It feels like a kind of like a call to war.
Absolutely.
And it's like, got that real, it's like summoning up this kind of furious, like, warlike energy. There is something kind of militaristic about it, but not in a sort of like slightly cringy way that a lot of music can be. It's because it's set in that sort of ancient context and stuff, it feels kind of legit. I don't know. I just wanted to, I could just imagine someone singing it with like a fucking sword in hand, like pointed towards their enemy, charging into battle. I love all that shit, man.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah,
I think you touched on something there, which I think is like a good point. It is kind of like a silly concept to me. Like, I think if you sold this to me with like the idea of it's like Roman metal, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But then,
I know what you mean.
But then I think that's the same with a lot of battle metal.
Yeah. One of the reasons I didn't get into X-Deo initially was the kind of Roman thing. I was like, right, well, I get Vikings and I get pirates and I get Egyptians, but I don't really get Romans. I was like, that's
gone too far now.
That's just too much. Because I was like, Rome's all sort of clean and like militaristic and ordered and stuff. But this album has a kind of a militaristic ferocity to it, doesn't it? I suppose it's kind of from the point of view of Hannibal anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think like you say, it's from the point of view of Hannibal, who, like, he's a fascinating character in history, and he's sort of he's a military genius that's still kind of taught today. So he's quite easy to base your cool concept album on.
Josh, stop trying to teach me history. You're making me want to learn about this. It's not what we came here for.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
But also, this is
come here to learn. No one came here to
no
learn.
facts allowed.
If anything, you're going to be stupider after listening to this podcast.
No, so this is their third studio album. Their first two were cool, but this is way better than their earlier work, in my opinion. I think it's kind of a huge leap forward. So I think it's interesting how they took a bit of time to nail the formula, I feel.
I did have a listen to, I think they have a song called Caligula. I think the album might be titled the same. I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, this album seemed to be where it really came together. Really enjoyed it.
Definitely. I think the narrative gives so much room to have such a range of emotions. It can be like exciting, it can be aggressive, it can be sort of sad and stuff. And there's so many genre influences in here as well. Like, we're sort of broadly describing it as death metal. I don't know if it even necessarily does fit into that category. Particularly, there's so many elements of like traditional like heavy metal, all the way to some bits that kind of reminded me of like hardcore and stuff, you know, and like metalcore kind of bits.
Really?
Yeah, some of the sort of softer guitar sections, some of the really like spitting like vocals.
Yeah, I was gonna say the vocal
style. He's got a very like
that.
aggressive vocal style. Yeah. It's not like he's sort of dropping down into his diaphragm and giving it a sort of full-on guttural. He's like belting it out. He's yelling. You know?
I think I know what you mean. In particular, like there's one bit which sounds really silly in isolation, but somehow works in the song. Where the lyrics, the lyrics are the general directing troops on the battlefield or something. Which, as I say, and as the listener hears this, is going to sound like the worst shit ever, right? But somehow,
that sounds amazing.
Somehow it gets pulled off properly. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's got this quite interesting kind of delivery throughout it. They actually have a more recent single out called Philosopher King.
Cool.
Which was written with the keyboard player from Flesh God Apocalypse.
All right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's kind of got a more orchestral feel to it, which is cool.
Okay, I must have overlooked that. I'll have to check that out. That sounds good.
Yeah, I'd love to see what else they do. And I mean, it's really invigorated my interest in just battle metal in general.
Yeah.
It just works so well for the genre.
So what was everyone's kind of favourite bits, standout tracks?
This is going to sound weird.
Out with it.
I think my favourite bit was the bit with all the like elephant sounds.
Oh yeah, like the whipping sound effects,
the whips and like the drums and stuff.
That's in,
at that point, I was like, "This is kind of moving me mentally to a different space," and I was there in that moment. But definitely, favourite songs: "Rise of Hannibal" and "Hispania," which I think are the first two on the album. Just like it just gets going so fast, and they really are absolute killer. And then the I want to say Salve Torelia, is that it? Salve Torelia?
Yeah.
That's meant to be Saturnalia.
Oh, okay.
They've written it kind of strangely.
Cool. That's because that's like a song, sort of an interlude. It's like a minute and a half of kind of drums and like orchestra.
It's quite epic.
I fucking love that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's fucking epic.
Yeah. I think for me, you picked the first two songs of the album. I'm going to pick the last two. I think "Spoils of War" and "The Roman" were like my two favorites. It felt like it like really built up to that like ending, and I was just
great stuff.
I was just leant back in my chair, sipping from a goblet of wine. Is that what a Roman would be drinking?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They like that wine.
Wearing my
That's what
toga.
this genre does to you, man. It's like whenever I listen to Turusas, they got that song, "The Court of Jasliev," and it starts with like it's like a Middle Eastern folk, like polka sort of sound, and you could just imagine like being there at some foreign court, like a sword by your side, drinking a goblet of wine.
It's really
just having conquered some distant lands. That's all I want to do.
We just all want to cosplay, basically.
Yeah, that's all metal is, really.
Yeah,
just cosplaying as Motorhead most of the time, anyway.
I mean, that's pretty fair.
That's pretty fucking accurate.
Yeah, I think to be honest, this Josh, this may have made its way into my regular rotation now. With a couple of songs here that I just
definitely, man.
Throughout the week, I listened to the album for a couple of times, and then I was like working, and I was just like, God, I just want to put on some XDO. Like, I just want to hear this right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to be hyped up, and it works. It's good. It's really good.
I think there should be great music to just like go for a run to or something.
Yeah,
like
I can see that.
Great music to conquer Gaul too.
Yeah.
For me, I think my standout tracks are probably Rise of Hannibal, Crossing the Alps, and I think The Battle of Zama. But I mean, that's quite a lot of the album. So
yeah.
I think...
Well, between us again, we've named almost the entire album, so that's a good fucking.
So yeah, we're doing pretty well this week, and I'm hoping we can go free for free. Pretty good album. So up next, we're talking about Stare into Death and Be Still by Ulcerate. Okay, so Ulcerate, they're a New Zealand-based extreme metal band. I say extreme metal as a pretty vague placement because I think they sit somewhere between like post-death, atmospheric black metal, maybe a bit avant-garde metal, but I don't really like that label either. Yeah, I think that description alone, that selection of genres, kind of gives you a good idea of what you get into. The band themselves have been active since 2000, and they've produced 6 full-length albums in that time, as well as a couple of EPs.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, they've been around for a while, and we're talking about their 6th studio album today, so their most recent, Stare into Death and Be Still, released last year, which has been pretty well received, made its way...
A lot of hype around this one.
Yeah, it's made its way into a lot of those top 10 albums of 2020 you see floating around towards the end of the year. So yeah, let's talk about it. What did you think, guys?
Yeah, man, I mean, I'd heard a lot about this album, and I'd kind of heard the name Ulcerate around quite a lot, but I didn't know anything about it, and I was sort of, because I knew we were going to cover it, I was sort of holding off and like waiting. I had it in my head that it was sort of straight up black metal, and I think in general I was imagining something quite different to what it was. So, I mean, I enjoyed this album, but for quite different reasons than I was expecting. I found it was quite like chill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
definitely.
it's enjoyable to listen to in terms of like the drumming is just so good. You can just kind of
don't talk to me about drumming.
Ben has got time for your nonsense about drumming, Tom.
I mean, I'm someone who I listen to an album on Spotify called something like Big Drum Solos. I can't remember, and it's about like 40 drum solos back to back. So I'll just listen to it all day, kind of thing. And this was a bit like that. To put it on and just kind of just have those drums going on in the background the whole time was an absolute pleasure. And not to mention the sort of dripping guitar sound all the way through. It's almost smooth, almost post-metal, ambient.
Yeah, definitely.
I was kind of in the same boat, really, with Tom. Like, I'd listened to Ulcerate before, years ago. I listened to Everything Is Fire a few times and I thought it was cool. When I listened to this, I kind of expected it to be, I don't know, I expected it to be different, but it's a really strange experience, but in a good way, because it's sort of like sinking into a kind of pit, right? And, you know, like you do something with like, no, but you know, when you listen to like a atmospheric black metal or like a doom or something like that, you kind of get enveloped in this kind of like black kind of fog.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's a bit like that, but it's also really fast and intense. It's a weird feeling.
I think that's one of the things.
It's very disorientating.
Yeah, I heard one description of the sound as nauseating, and I quite liked that because it kind of is. It's that like overwhelming, just swirling sound around you, and you just sort of, you just become fully enveloped in it. Like, and you want to play it loud, right? I don't know if that's just me, but I want it loud.
I mean, for that reason, it reminded me a lot of. I'm going to say Migla because I'm not entirely sure how they're supposed to be pronounced. A Polish black metal band. They have it just has that all-encompassing kind of total surrounding sound and this kind of feeling of like total impenetrability, darkness, dissonant, atmospheric. I tell you what, actually, I was enjoying listening to it in terms of thinking, well, this is cool. This is very, very good. It's almost like artisan level of like production and like, you know. But I think I kind of got it a bit more when I was actually getting the tube on like a freezing day and just like going through all those tunnels full of like pipes and like steam vents and like grates and all just that kind of industrial, urban, like enclosed environments. Suddenly it started to make perfect sense.
Yeah.
You need a kind of bleak environment for the bleak music.
Yeah,
you know what? Just on that, like, because I know you're not saying like bleak in like a depressing way, because I find that it's like bleak, but then like equally uplifting at the same time. I found that like some of the, I think the way they change between being really, really high paced and then really slow, and then changing back. And I think at times it even got a bit like noodly in there. Like the guitars were kind of separating off from the drums, and then they bring it back with a really high tempo piece. And it wasn't oppressive and depressing. It was like oppressive and then a sudden like burst of energy, and you just feel you're up again. And then like,
I tell you what, I know that feeling, definitely. I think Migler is a band that I'm going to go back to a lot in terms of comparisons where, you know, Exercises in Futility is the name of one of their albums, and it's supposed to be bleak and nihilistic and kind of almost like depressing, but actually there's some level of like nihilistic beauty about it where it's almost saying like nothing really matters, but like we are what we are as living organisms, and it's like strange.
It kind of feels like a storm like brews up and then like dissipates out when it gets into those more like low tempo parts. Like...
It definitely, I mean, it's an existential crisis.
So if you're looking for that, have a listen.
I think in terms of the sound, I would have preferred some like slightly clearer vocals in places, just to maybe guide some of that sort of stuff lyrically.
I know what you mean. I did have a similar thought, but I couldn't think of how I would change it.
I do feel perhaps that the kind of horrible, difficult to understand vocal style kind of adds to the disorienting, nauseating feel.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It would maybe it'd be more listenable, but it wouldn't be ulcerating.
And there's a lot
perhaps.
of effects on the vocals as well, and there was a lot of like reverb and things like that. So it's again, it's that thing in metal where like the voice is an instrument. Maybe understanding the lyrics aren't so key.
It is totally that. Yeah, I almost feel like if you take the old style of production where it's like vocals on top, then guitar, then drums, it's almost total opposite of that in a way. It's like you're listening to the drums, vocals, the guitars sort of just
sorry, we've just mentioned drums again, and I feel like I didn't say this. I really fucking love the drums on this album. I gotta say it. It's gonna become a thing, but it was, again, when I was listening to this, I was just like, what was I saying? Because like there's so many good like fills and just like guides the whole music. Like I think the drummer's name is Jamie Saint Murat. Probably saying that wrong, but God, yeah, it's so good, and it's such a like. I think what you just said, you really nailed it. It's not layered in terms of like vocals on top, guitars, drums. They're all playing an equal part, and I think I might be wrong, but I think there's only 3 members in the band. And they get a lot out of the 3 of them.
Wow, yeah.
But like doing above and beyond, and then coming together amazingly. Like...
Also, the guitar work in it's really interesting because there's not much in the terms of like I don't think like proper kind of memorable riffs or like chugging away or like thrashing or anything like that. It's literally almost like a kind of endless like it's not an endless noodling.
Yeah.
Which is going to make it sound bad, but
almost everything we're saying sounds bad, but we mean it in a good way. Can you imagine in any other context describing a band as nauseating and disorienting as meaning it in a positive way?
And also saying, but it leaves me feeling uplifted.
That's the thing. If I don't know, the Arctic Monkeys or something came out with a song and everyone was like, this is just nauseating, disorientating, disgusting, existential, bleak, nihilistic, oppressive, impenetrable, you'd be like, well, they fucked up.
I guess that's a 0 out of 10.
But it's exactly what it's supposed to be, isn't it? I found, for me though, like it didn't quite break through emotionally like that. Didn't feel like I had that kind of what I'd almost call like an existential breakthrough that you get from like black metal, where you listen to it and it's like, oh, nothing matters, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think I'm the same as you. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's always going to be in my mind because it is really good. But I don't know if this would be the thing I'd come back to. I went through a bit of like a post-metal phase in 2017, saw a lot of live post-metal bands. This had me feeling about like listening to them again. I don't know whether or not Ulcerate will be the top of that list, but man, I'd love to see them live, and I want to hear what else they do. I feel like this album is it's evident they've been building this sound for a long time, because I suppose the good news is if you like this album, their previous album sounds quite similar. So, but this is like a more refined version of that. So, if you like this, there's more of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing I found was that after I wasn't listening to the album, songs, the sound of it was staying in my head. Not particular songs or particular moments, but almost like I could just make up a song in my mind. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so random and chaotic that it's almost like the sound, the kind of whole flow of the music stays in there.
I know exactly what you mean, because I don't know if I'm using the right word for it because I'm not a guitarist, but the trebly sound of the guitar, that sound is really unique, and it's kind of throughout the whole album, and it's really sort of, that feels like the signature in a way. And I know what you mean about the sound kind of being captured much more than in individual songs or riffs. Because whilst there are kind of riffs, I think the one from title track actually,
definitely
is big. It's much more the overall context of that sound. That's the thing that you take away from it. At least I found.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. At certain points, it kind of reminded me of. Have you guys heard "Organic Hallucinosis" by Decapitated? It's like a technical death metal album, but it has that kind of total chaos, slightly ambient sort of sense of it, and it's sort of like the music almost seems to change direction and come back on itself over and over again. It reminded me of that in a lot of ways, although I feel like that's slightly more machine-like and industrial, and this has slightly more kind of elemental sound.
Funny how you use words like that, and I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I know exactly. It's Elemental's a really great to put it, actually. It does feel a bit like some kind of cosmic force in a way, doesn't it? Or like the ocean waves or something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had a lot of imagery in my head of like storms brewing and then like, lightning over stormy oceans. Puts you in that mindset.
It would be a difficult sell to someone who wasn't into metal.
Yeah, I think we've covered a couple of albums this week which were all very different. And I think if you wanted to introduce someone to metal, maybe start with System of a Down and not Ulcerate.
It's kind of like...
Yeah, we'd go in pretty much this exact order.
Yeah, you start with System of a Down. Before you know it, you're cosplaying as a Roman, and then you're having an existential crisis at the end of the night because you've just put on Ulcerate.
That's the path that all metalheads are walking down. They just want some sort of really heavy, fun party music. And before you know it, they're describing something as bleak to mean good. Yeah, I liked it. Really, yeah, nice.
Yeah, I really liked how nauseating it sounded.
Oh, man.
Yeah, horrible album. Loved it. So, Ben, any standout tracks?
Right, yeah, I think this is a difficult one. And I'm interested to see what you guys think as well, because I don't really think this album lends itself to standout tracks. I found the only track that really sticks in my head, honestly, is the titular track, Stare into Death and Be Still. Because that one, I think,
me too,
like Josh said, it has that really signature guitar sound that you hear throughout the whole album. But then, and again, this is like another bad thing that I'm saying, but it's totally not. The whole album comes as like a package. Like, you want to put this on and let it play for an hour.
Yeah.
You don't just dip into this, I think. What do you guys think?
I agree. I think it comes off almost like a sonic experience,
Ooh, I like that.
I'm definitely on the same page. It almost, I think, would lend itself best to being like that Sleep album, which is one song, or that Bell Witch album, which is one song. You can't really break it up into bits. It's just one thing.
You almost just want to get into like a sensory deprivation tank and just sort of
God, that would either be amazing or I would never sleep again. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think title track that would be where I'd go to if I was going to come back to the album just for like one song. I feel like this album's almost like that subreddit artisan videos. You could almost like put it on there and people would be like, oh yeah, no, I see. This
and
is
then those are wanky comments about how metal's actually quite artistic. It's like, yeah, we know. All right.
Yeah, it's actually really, really complicated and intelligent. You have to be pretty smart to like aborted pig fetus.
Almost spat my drink across my laptop.
So, in this song, Stab Wound, the band Necrophagist are actually advancing a deep political treatise.
The thing about Lateralis is, right, it follows the Fibonacci sequence.
Hey! Too far!
Yeah, we'll get onto that later in the season.
It doesn't follow the Fibonacci sequence. It follows the first 5 of the Fibonacci sequence, then just repeats. So it's
well, that's not good enough for you, Josh.
Sequence.
Okay.
Well, the Fibonacci sequence is a sequence.
I'm getting triggered. Let's move on. Let's talk about Tool.
It's objectively not the Fibonacci sequence.
Oh, God!
Yeah, we got Tool coming later in the season, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got their new album.
I believe so.
Later on. We look forward to that. It'll be.
I am looking forward to that, to be honest.
Gushing for an hour.
So, Ulcerate, Stare into Death and Be Still.
Yeah,
very nice.
Good stuff.
I think we summed it up earlier. Yep, made me feel
nauseating.
Sick. I loved it.
Horrible.
Absolutely brilliant.
Disgusting. 10 out of 10.
So guys, that was System of a Down with Hypnotise. We had XDO with Immortal Wars and Ulcerate with Stare into Death and Be Still.
Disgusting.
Wow, what a week. What do you guys think?
Really good stuff all around, actually.
Absolutely. All the albums are great. Sometimes when you listen to music for a review or something like that, it can be a bit difficult to get through it. If it's a genre you aren't a big fan of, or if But I think, I just really enjoyed it.
Look at us.
A lot of fun.
Well done, everyone.
Big.
I think we've earned another pat on the back.
Yeah, aren't we good?
Yeah.
It's worth saying that later on in the season, I think we will have some stuff some of us will hate.
I'm certain of it.
I think we're starting out
I can't wait.
on fairly even footing and all agreeing and stuff, especially this week. And I predict next week probably as well. I think coming up there's going to be some
arguments between us. We might fall out.
Podcast's going to finish.
Yeah. So speaking of next week, what are we going to be talking about, Tom?
So next week we're going to be listening to Headstrong, an album by a thrash punk band from Cornwall called Rash Decision, who I've been into for quite a long time.
And who I have now been exposed to for many years because of you.
Yeah.
So I am pretty familiar with this. Not through ever putting it on myself, but
I
You know.
have met a similar fate,
Oh, you lived with the guy, so
often in the kitchen whilst trying to make my breakfast.
Oh yeah, mate, it's good early morning music.
Is it?
let's not give too much away. So, Josh, what are you bringing for next week?
I'm bringing Thousands of Evils by Vilgiata.
I thought you were just bringing thousands of evils.
Yeah, I'm just bringing hundreds of demons and devils and stuff to unleash upon you. No, so Vilgiata are a Swedish kind of gent prog
Ooh, okay.
band.
I think this might be controversial.
They actually call themselves like Thal. So they've got they have gents coming on out of here. They have their own one.
Right.
Oh, really?
Like it's Thal or Thal or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm interested. I think this could go either way
yeah.
for me.
It
I
looks like a short
think they're
album,
really
so
cool.
that's cool.
They do a lot of interesting stuff. They've got a lot of I think you'll like it, actually. They've got a lot of very horrible sounding discordant music, but they've also got a lot of cool...
Yeah, I like things that sound horrible. Yep.
Yeah, nauseate. I describe them as nauseating, but in the best way possible.
My favourite.
Terrible,
Love it.
but
fantastic.
brilliant.
And yeah, and I will be bringing Goat Snake with their album Black Age Blues.
Sweet. I'm looking forward to that one, yeah.
Yeah, they're an American. They're labeled as doom metal, but there's just a lot going on in there. There's a harmonica on a lot of songs. It's got a bit of like American
not enough
country. They got a lot of
harmonica.
influences in there. They're pretty good. That's all I'll say about that.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Cool. Well, I suppose nothing else to say, but thank everybody for listeing to episode 2 of
Yeah.
the Metal Face podcast. And yeah, we'll be back next week.
I'll see you guys next week.
I'll hear you guys next week.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. That was the Metal Face Podcast. Go follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for Season and Mist, Character Anger, and Separation for their music in the intro. And thank you to Johnny Peterson for transition music throughout. Go check out his projects at Heads for the Dead, Massacre, Wormvale, and Wombath. And most importantly, thank you for listening. Take it easy, and hail Satan.